Hi guys, I am back for another video. I was just researching for a presentation and doing a presentation for my friend's health club that she has. And I wanted to just give a little presentation on basic alchemy of the four elements. So I was looking up images in star tetrahedron and just trying to collect some data for my presentation when I came across some interesting information. I get triggered when I go on these journeys because I'm very curious, so I want to know things. And so, as I was looking up these images, which I love, by the way, I love this image because this is the actual energies that are all around us. Now, these things spin and give off light frequencies, basically. And those light frequencies are combined to create the things that we call matter, which is mother, which is earth. And so it has the four elements of alchemy. It has the fire, air, water, and earth principle. And it's all basically an illusion. You can think of it as like the screens, the LCD screens in your computer or even in your cell phone, and they're spinning at these spin rates, and it creates different imagery that we then can interact with. So anyway, I was looking into these images when I came across this website. I saw this website and I was like, oh, Mer-Ka-Ba, that's right. I need to look up that word. So I went over here and I was like, oh, let me see what it says. And everybody promotes the Mer-Ka-Ba as a good thing. But I get suspicious and I'm like, well, let me just go look up the etymology of Mer-Ka-Ba because each little section of a word is typically linked with an origin somewhere. So naturally, I go into etymology and I go to Mer. And this can apply to mermaid or Mer-Ka-Ba or, all these different things. So what I found is that Mer is associated with to die. I'm like, oh, okay. And literally every word in here that is related to it is crushes, bruises, to kill, to die, died, dead, death, mortal man, immortal, to die. I mean, it just keeps going, to consume. It's all about death and dying, right? So then I go, okay, well, we know Mer is like mort, and that means death. So what about Ka? Well, here we go with the word Ka. It means to like death, basically, to desire death. Okay, so then we go, okay, what about Ba? And they didn't have anything for Ba, so I went and just typed it in to the browser. And what does Ba mean? Okay, well, then Ba goes into Egyptian information, and it's the soul or personality of a person. And it's represented as a bird-headed figure which survives after death but must be sustained with offerings of food. Now, let's just say, okay, that's a soul. It represents the soul. So when you put Mer-Ka-Ba together, it basically means the soul desires death, a soul desires death. And I just thought that was interesting because I'm like, okay, that's not what they portray this as. They're portraying this as, oh, well, you got to activate this Mer-Ka-Ba. I'm sorry, but I don't want to activate the death. And why would it be related to death when it's a star tetrahedron that is pretty much associated with everything in existence? Because as you can see here, look, so it fits inside the Metatron's cube. This is what Metatron's cube is, guys, is that Metatron's cube creates this existence. It's part of the flower of life. We should not fear this knowledge. This is why, so many people are still in darkness when they start fearing all this symbolism. What it is we need to iron it out. We need to figure it out. This is all tied to the celestial heavens. Every single thing that we think about, everything that we eat, breathe, and even writing and spelling and language and all this stuff, it's tied to the celestial heavens. And I'll show you that in just a moment. Okay, so here's modern alchemy, and it talks about the hexagram. I just want to go across this a little bit more because I've traversed this in other videos, but all of my videos get buried because I'm talking about so many different subjects. So to begin, this is not the Star of David. David is obviously a thief, and that's basically what we discover when we look into things like this. Many people will see this in alchemy and think that this is what it represents because of what they say is Jewish. It's not, it's the hexagram. And I don't even think we should be calling it the hexagram. If you put in star tetrahedron, it pops up. And it's more three-dimensional when you look up star tetrahedron. So this is used to represent all four of the basic elements: water, fire, earth, and air. The hexagram, a hex, we know that a hex is a curse, and basically you can use this as a curse to curse people through alchemy. That's what all of this is about. That's what spelling is about. This is all using the celestial heavens, and we don't have the knowledge, but we need to obtain it, and that's why I'm looking into all this stuff, just connecting dots. So the hexagram is used in arrays that deal with a wide range of transmutable material. An example would be Kimberly's arrays, which are shown below. So you have the water principle, and then you have the fire principle, and a holy trinity would be the sun, which is not represented as this. This is completely wrong. The sun would be the upright shape or pyramid, and the moon would be the downward facing, because this would be water, which is yin, and this would be yang, which is the sun. So they have this completely, they want to confuse people, and this is something that I keep seeing in literally every aspect of our world, is that there is nothing but chaos and confusion and duality literally everywhere. They want to give people false information to trick their minds and to send them off down the wrong path. And this is literally everywhere. Duality of health. I saw where they were promoting sugar as a neutral ingredient in food, and I'm like, sugar is absolutely not neutral. It's acidic. It creates an acidic body, and this is research that I've done continually throughout the years, and now they're saying that it's a neutral, and so are starches. But then they're also saying that salt is acidic, and I'm like, no. Then again, they're completely incorrect. Salt is very alkaline, especially, I went to the Dead Sea and floated in a salt lake, basically. And my body was so supple and the skin was so soft from the alkalinity. It was like over alkalinity, but it's actually a health benefit. So I wouldn't, advise drinking that much salt, but, to sit in it, your body is made of salt. That's why in alchemy, it tells you about the three primes, and it's mercury, salt, and sulfur. Salt being the body, mercury the mind, and then the soul is attached to sulfur. So these are the things that we can start to bring back once we look into it. And so as I traverse some of this knowledge and all of my exploration, I just like to share what I discover. This is just a little example of what I'm talking about. This is sulfur, mercury, and salt. And what we have is the body. The physical body is made mostly of water and earth as a tangible substance, but then we have the air and fire principle. The fire is going to be not only the illumination of light in your bodily cells, but it also represents the spirit. And then you have the air to amplify that. When you lose your air, that is the spirit that then exits the body. So here's the mind, air and water. It's fluid. It's going to be a substance that is not tangible. So it's represented by the air principle. So that's just another little example. Here's just a little thing on ancient alchemy. Left is the eye of Thoth or thought, the right eye of Ra, the sun. Now this will be most likely for male figures, is what I'm kind of learning a little bit when I get into the yin and yang. The female body is the opposite of what the male body is. So the right eye is typically gold or Ra with males, and in females, the right eye is apparently the moon. So that it flips because we are an opposite polarity. And this is why we can actually go and make children and all this stuff. We're basically batteries, but we're two halves of the whole. So it flips and it changes. And this is all, on another level. If you start studying yin and yang, they start, talking about different things. So when we get into deep alchemy, we truly start looking at celestial heaven information. And the knowledge just increases as you go up in different studies and sciences and learning about nature. It just gets higher and higher. And these are the different degrees. So our language is actually created from the stars and the celestial heavens. And I have some information on that. I keep coming across more and more information. Since I'm on this path, I discovered these things, and that's what my soul wants to do, is to leave breadcrumb trails, I guess, behind after I pass, so that other people can pick up with the knowledge and hopefully expand even more on top of it, because that's what we do as we traverse the wheel of time, is just continually build upon things that are around us to rediscover and rebuild the world. And especially these foundational truths. This is stuff that's been around since the dawn of time. And so I'm not the purveyor of this knowledge. I'm merely the messenger who's picking up the pieces and the breadcrumb trails that I'm finding and putting it out there and presenting it to the population to say, hey, look, these are things that we really should be looking into if we truly want to rebuild the world, know who we are fully and completely, and what we're doing here and what our true abilities are. Because I know that we have latent abilities that are lying dormant right now, because of our ignorance of such abilities and our disbelief in such abilities. And I just know that the truth is there regarding all of this, and that there's a dark, destructive force that wishes to keep us from obtaining this knowledge again. And that, maybe perhaps we don't have the knowledge for very long, and that's what happens time and time again. But the warring and fighting is what is keeping us from our knowing. And it keeps us running about, keeps us, running in circles. It's really frustrating, because I just wish I could get paid to just sit and ground myself, or go to an alchemy school, or go study these things and truly know my divinity, because ultimately this is each of our journey, and we all have different purposes here on what we're here to discover and learn. But for me, I just want to know truth, and I want to know, what is this world truly about? What are we doing here? Why are we running around in circles like we have no knowledge? We have no power. We've been disempowered. We've been made into slaves. I just feel like there's truth that's rising all around us, because I've seen it, and it's coming. And believe me, I'm gaining some of the power through the knowledge, but it's not enough. I want my innate abilities, not just the ability to go out here and research things and share it. I want to know how to levitate, or use some psychic abilities and just activate things. So I am very cautious about what they call Hebrew language and Hebrew knowledge and all this, because that word Hebrew just triggers me. It says, wait a minute, hold up. If that word means swindler, then what are they doing to people? What are they doing to people's minds? What are they doing with all this supposed knowledge that they have? I feel like they're basically tricking people. I mean, look at what they've done so far with who they truly are, like what they've been representing with the human trafficking and the slavery and all the things that they've been doing. They've been taking over the world, y'all. I don't know if y'all noticed, but I don't think I would want to classify myself as being associated with this group. And I don't think that it's necessarily, the entire Hebrew community. I just think that there's a dark faction that has taken over and donned these cloaks, and they're literally using psychological operations on people to get them to follow them. And we need to just step away from these titles and these associations and stand in our own truth and our own power of who we are. So, each of us has a journey of curiosity and things we have to discover, and that's where I am. But if you notice, all of this ties into the zodiac wheel, the wheel of time, the star power, the celestial alignments. You'll notice that your chart looks a lot like these star angles. And when I listened to Jordan Maxwell, he mentioned that the angels are the angles of heaven. And that would imply that it is these celestial alignments that actually have sway and power, and that each hour that ticks by is a different celestial alignment. And we don't have the knowledge, so we're completely disempowered as to when to take action for certain hours, when to retreat in certain hours. And that's our biggest downfall, I think, is that once we obtain the knowledge again of the celestial heavens, the different calendar clock alignments, the times when things will happen, things to look forward to, like this eclipse that's coming up on April the 8th, that they've already called out the National Guard to get ready, and they're thinking that there's going to be a terrorist attack. So the sheriff's offices around the United States have actually been, notified, put on notice by the FBI. I mean, there's all these different groups and different things that they're actually preparing for, because this celestial event is going to mark Planet X, which is the Great Reset Day. So it's going to be the final scratch for the X that crosses across the United States. And, what sort of energy is it going to bring? Is it going to bring some sort of chaos? I mean, they're even saying, all kinds of fearful things like, oh, it's going to be days of darkness and all that. I don't buy into the fear factor. What I think is going to happen is more light is going to be pushed. The more light that comes, the darkness appears to grow darker, but it keeps exposing itself in that manner because of the light that's shining. So I think it's really just a sign that the darkness is starting to give way and that the golden spring is on the rise. And that's what they're really fearful of, is this whole great awakening. And great awakening happens because the universe breathes us into existence, and we flow with that cosmic journey that we do not recognize as our great story. Most people that don't follow the Wheel of Time don't know that it's our story, that it's us and the character roles that we came to play. And it's the greatest story on earth. And it's eternal and it does not stop. And it seems like a linear thing, but perhaps it's not really, because we pop in and out of this existence into different timelines. And this is the true time travel capability. So, that's just part of it. Well, I don't know how many of you are really interested in alchemy as much as I am, or if you've even been curious enough to look into this. But if you are curious, I would suggest looking into the Magnum Opus, because this applies to each and every one of us. It's called the Magnum Opus, or the Great Work. They call it Hermeticism, but again, I've been looking into Hermes, and Hermes and Thoth are not the same person. Most people don't look into this comparative analysis. You know me, I'm going to be digging on things, and Hermes is a trickster god. So it leads me to believe, or to come to a conclusion, in my own opinion, based on my research, but I haven't been able to prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt. But I believe that Hermes may have tricked Thoth, or had just somehow gotten or obtained Thoth's teachings. Perhaps he was the one who obtained that smagnerine or green tablet and got the information. And he was deemed the thrice great by the Romans, who deified him, the thrice great. This is where, I lend caution, because as we know, Rome never really fell. It merely conquered the world. And I believe that there's been a dark force behind all of these different legions and wars that have happened. I believe that men's minds are fallible, and that they can be controlled by dark forces, and that throughout time, this dark force that lies beneath the ground has influenced the minds of men and spurred them into action to war against each other, and for greed and for triumph and all of these things. And so that's where I am in my belief of this, and that there are strange beings and creatures around the world. It's just that, somehow our average society, we don't see these things or experience them, and most people don't want to talk about it anyway because they fear that they will be just shunned, laughed at, a laughing stock. So most people don't share their weird experiences or instances where they come across these other beings. But lately, there's been a lot of camera action that's picking up the strangest beings you've ever seen. So something's happening, and I guess we will know about that in the future. But this entire great work is an alchemical term for the process of working with the prima materia, which is your body, your mind, your spirit, to create the Philosopher's Stone. Now, the Philosopher's Stone is this notion of working to do an alchemy process where you turn a stone into gold, into polished gold. And really, they're talking about your personality traits. They're talking about your spirit, your soul. They're saying to walk in the middle pillar, not too far left or right. The left-hand path is of darkness, the right-hand path is of the light. So they're saying walk the middle path. So that goes along with your personality, correct your darker elements, and polish those elements into a glistening gold. This is what it's all about. So it's not just about alchemy outside the body, it's the alchemy inside the body. So this has been used to describe personal and spiritual transmutation in the Hermetic tradition attached to laboratory processes and chemical color changes used as a model for the individuation process and as a device in art and literature. The Magnum Opus has been carried forward in New Age and Neo-Hermetic movements, which sometimes attach new symbolism and significance to the processes. The original process philosophy has 4 stages: nigredo, which is the blackening or melanosis; albedo, the whitening or leucosis; citrinitas, the yellowing or xanthosis; rubido, the reddening, purpling or iosis. So that's just part of the great work. So this is just a brief little synopsis of the different processes found in alchemy. The alchemical author sometimes elaborated on 3 or 4 color model by enumerating a variety of chemical steps to be performed. Though these were often arranged in groups of 7 or 12 stages, there is little consistency in the names of these processes, their number, their order, their description. Actually, they did have a particular order because you begin at the beginning, and each of these phases can be found in the alchemical processes of the zodiac, which is very interesting. Right now, we're about to enter multiplication phase. That's the age of Aquarius. And so projection would be Pisces. So it begins with calcination, solution, separation, conjunction, putrefaction, congelation, cibation, sublimation, fermentation, exaltation, multiplication, and projection. I thought I would mention this about the introduction to alchemy and how this Frater Albertus. So frater is a term that they use in the Rosicrucianism, and Albertus, like Albertus Dumbledore for Harry Potter, yeah, was a longtime member of the Rosicrucian order and the founder of the Paracelsus Research Society. I've been wanting to go down this Paracelsus rabbit hole, and I haven't quite delved into all of his work yet, but I'm going to. Then an eminent alchemist who was Paracelsus, through his many workshops and books, served as a mentor to some of the most important alchemists of today. The article below is an introduction to his book, The Alchemist's Handbook, or the Manual for Practical Laboratory Alchemy, an invaluable guide for aspiring alchemists. So that's why I wanted to mention this. You can look for the Alchemist's Handbook, and this was made by Paracelsus. Paracelsus was nothing less than amazing in his research. So basically, I wanted to start truly diving in and comparing some of these alchemical and celestial designs because the powers that be have been using these high magicians, or what they call priests. This is where the priesthood class comes in. A priest is no less than a magician, guys. He's a high magician who knows and comprehends high magic. And all of these designs that you see here are based on the celestial heavens and the different star power emanations that you can summon down to pull, because thoughts are electromagnetic energy. And as you work your magic or your thoughts and your intentions into the ether, you can begin to magnetize specific elements and alchemical means to you and for processes that are outwardly expressed in the ether. So that's what they've been doing. This is a mechanism that they've been employing that we don't comprehend because we've been disempowered from the knowledge. We've been disconnected from this knowledge. And this is very extremely powerful knowledge to obtain. They say in the Hermetic books that I have, it says that the highest obtainable knowledge is of the celestial heavens and the star power that is there. To become a high magician is the highest obtainable knowledge, because you can know the movements of time and space. So that's why it's important, at least to me, to try to comprehend it and at least grasp some small essence of it, because it's a lot of information and it would take you an entire lifetime of study. And that's what some of these other people did. But I feel like the giants are still around somewhere in the world, and that they not only were probably the ones who created us, but they also held all of this knowledge and still do. And I feel like they're just waiting for the right opportunity, the right moment to present themselves to us again. And I believe this happens time and time again, where somehow the world gets divided and conquered by a dark force. And then we all start trying to figure out where we came from, who we are. And then it just happens over and over. Maybe we are just the fifth root race, and this has happened. This is the fifth time this has happened, where we were created as slaves. And then somehow this great cataclysm, this one faction of giants wanted to free us, while the other faction of giants wanted to keep us slaves. So I don't know. And this is the kind of the connectivity that I'm starting to kind of feel out. Like, where'd the giants go? They're not all gone. There's some remnants hidden within the genetics of us. And it's starting to present itself even more. But I'm just trying to figure out what is going on, why it's going on, where this all came from, what's the highest knowledge, what do we need to know about some of this stuff. So that's why I'm just so curious. I want to know stuff. So here we go. Here's another alchemist type of design. And again, it gets into the celestial heaven knowledge. This is all information that we don't fully comprehend, but it's here. So again, this is the downward facing pyramid or star tetrahedron. This is the bottom part. So this is water pointing downwards, and cube is Earth and Saturn combined to create time and space. And they don't want us to obtain this deeper knowledge, because if we did, we absolutely would know ourselves fully. We wouldn't need them ever again, ever. So they confuse us and confuddle us, and they make people afraid of it, and they keep people from obtaining this knowledge. And this is truly deep, deep-seated knowledge of the celestial heavens and our abilities and who we are, where we come from. And to me, that's important to know. But they have got us all kinds of discombobulated. As you can see, this is a holy trinity. And I had already figured that out, that for holy trinities, holy is always going to be a reference to the sun. Holy, it's a whole. And so is the moon. The moon's also a whole. It's a birth canal. But the sun is your sun, your inner sun, the one that guides you, your soul that guides you. This is the sun, the moon, and Saturn. And that's why I'm saying, like, you have to have these holy trinities. But I think it's always going to imply that you work with a trifecta of star power, which is the 7 heavenly bodies. There is no Pluto, there is no Neptune, there is no Uranus or Uranus with magical practice. They have only 7. So the Romans came up with Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune. They threw that in there. I can't find any reference to that, further back. So whenever I dive into any of this alchemy practice, it's always just these 7. I think that they wanted to create 3 more planets to throw people off, but I don't know the truth of it. So, apparently, after researching a little bit about the names, they're kind of related to darker energies. So I don't know. So I want you to look deeply into this picture. This is a couple of men, right? And they have this book. And of course, here we go, 7. 7 keys, right? But look at what's in these jars. Look at what's in these vessels. What are they implying here? That they created another race, that they created a diminutive human, because that's what it says. In some of Paracelsus's work, it talks about creating diminutive or small human without using sexual ingredients. You do use the male part, but he was able to create a small human without a female. What does that tell you? I mean, that's huge. So I think what we're dealing with a lot of this stuff is knowledge that has fallen into the wrong hands. And since it'll never actually be corrected, it is going to be a continuous cycle of darkness that is trying to make an attempt at world takeover, and then the light tries to take over, and then the darkness takes over. And that continually, as we traverse around the great wheel, there's just another slave race. There's another chimera. There's another thing that is created and made and formed. And that it's just going to be an endless cycle, and it's never going to stop. And all of those things of the past, we're going to see those things again because the timelines will repeat themselves. So it just goes around and around, and we're just trying to remember, like, what's happened in the past and who we are, what's going on here. This is crazy. There's so many things to consider. And as you get into all these occult symbols, it just becomes mind-boggling, but you see the same shapes over and over again. The water symbol, and then Metatron's cube, and Metatron's cube is merely Earth and Saturn overlay, and then, all the other sacred geometries that are in here. And it just becomes a mystery until we can actually get into alchemy again, deep into alchemy, and go, oh, okay. But I believe you have to study zodiac information, and astrology information, and astro-theology information, and science information based in alchemy, but then spiritual and philosophical and these things, because they're all part of the same whole. That wholeness, the oneness that can be found in the center. And this is where I was looking at that image of the star tetrahedron, and how when you overlap them, there's a center point. From the Holy Trinity, there's a center point that makes that star power. So here's the image. Where have we seen this? Well, let's see. It's the Triforce for the Legend of Zelda image and icons. And then see this right in the center? See this right here. This speaks volumes to me because it implies that I know that this is actually just one of the tips that comes out like this. But when I saw this image, it dawned on me. I was like, that's the center of this Holy trinity of magic from star alchemy, which we are. We are the stars who descended from heaven, and our bodies replicate the same processes and the same systems that are found outside the body. As within, so without, and as above, so below. And that is very profound knowledge when you truly look at it. And so I just wanted to show briefly that all religions are based on astro-theology. This is a window from a Christian church, which is symbolic of the cycles of time played out in the heavens. The sun is in the middle, and divided into 12 sections for each constellation. Now, this is the whole great year that is played out on smaller scale each year, and even smaller scale every day. So each hour that ticks by again is a constellational energy that these billionaires have been hiring these different astrologers to tell them when to do things. And so they go by the celestial heavens. We're the ones who don't do this, but we need to maybe think about it sometime. You know, some people do, some people don't. But here's another chart. It says the great year, which lasts just under 25,000 year precession, moving anti-clockwise. At the moment we are in Pisces, moving into Aquarius. So again, this is based on Western astro-theology, which will have a seasonal change. Each of the 3 ages represents a season, and we're in the dark ages currently, or moving into the age of Aquarius, and we're not even halfway through the dark ages. So that just tells you we get a long way to go before we get out of the dark ages and back into the Bronze Age section, which is another 3 ages, spans 3 ages, and then the Silver Age, and then the Golden Age. So we have different imagery that shows that man is the measure of the universe, and that all of these constellations that we talk about are actually associated and connected to the different parts of the body. Now, we are obviously not using all the constellations that are available. There are other constellations that are not considered for whatever reason. And to me, it seems like maybe in ancient Egypt, they had different constellations that they used or focused on. And again, you use the constellations based on magical practice. So perhaps these people who are in positions of power have changed our zodiac charts in order to employ specific constellations for particular reasons. Now, you know, I'm trying to sort through this because, as you can see, when you look up at the heavens, there's a lot of stars in the sky. And I think what they mainly focus on are the ones that are the brightest, and that those are somehow tied to some of these main constellations that we look at. I'm not sure, you know, what makes them choose one over another, but this is just the only logical solution that I can come up with. Now, when we get into alchemy again, we're talking about language, and all of our languages have been based on the celestial heavens and the constellational shapes. I came across a little video on Instagram that actually proved it. Okay, so I mentioned that the alphabet comes from the celestial heavens, or what we know as the stars. It's based off of the shapes of the constellations. This is where spelling and spell casting comes from, is the planetary alignments and celestial heavens, the notion of celestial knowledge as the highest obtainable knowledge, and that's why we use it in our spelling and spell casting, because that's where all of this energy comes from. When you have the stars, you're talking about electricity versus the magnetism of what we call earth or water. So earth and water are magnetism, which they've come up with a term called gravity, and the air and fire principle hold the electricity. And you have to have the ground in order for the electricity to actually flow and work. So with the radionic fields of light from heaven, these designs are able to magnetize some of this electricity down from the heavens. And it's all a holographic illusion. That's why this actually works as alchemical processes. Believe me when I say that literally everything in existence is based off of alchemy. And this is the greatest science and spiritual science that they do not want us to learn. Because if you go and you look up the definition of alchemy right now on Wikipedia or on Britannica, it will tell you that it's a pseudoscience because they're still downplaying knowledge and they don't want you to have this knowledge. Because if you did have this knowledge, you could not be controlled. And that is the sum of it. So here's a guy who talks about it, and he says, Christians, you can't read it right here, but it says, Christians can't bear any of this information because they have been mind controlled and manipulated and sold lies that they now embrace wholeheartedly and very firmly, that it's all witchcraft and magical practice and it's of the devil. So, if you want to keep kids away from the matches and other things, you'll tell them stories, scare them away from doing things. Oh no, you can't do that. Oh, something's going to come get you if you do that. Well, yeah, that's where we are with this madness. So then we get into the letters, and our language, the English language, is backwards, and it is read backwards, and it's spelled backwards. And that's why we have people who are dyslexic. It's because we came from the stars and we know different symbols intrinsically. It's already embedded in our programming that we came with the stars. We know certain things already. So when we come across the letters today, it doesn't make any sense to our inner knowing. And so it comes outwardly as what they call dyslexia, which is incorrect. So here we are with the different alphabet. So Taurus is here, the AB, Aries, Pisces, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, and Capricorn, which means they have been utilizing and harnessing these specific constellational energies based on the trinities and other sacred geometric shapes and patterns that these stars create. So, what does it all mean? There's some meaning, there's deeper meaning here, that everything in this existence is based off of this star information. That's why we have sacred geometry. It's geometry of the stars. And then we pull it down from heaven to use it in this earthly context. So there's a big chart here that explains a little bit more, and it gets so complicated. I'm trying to decipher some of this stuff and trying to learn from this alchemy that is before me. And believe me, it's a lot of information, but all we can do is take it in small doses and try to digest it, try to disseminate it. What does this actually mean? What sort of energy does this imbibe? Well, you can go and you can learn some stuff about the zodiac and the different constellational energies, and then come back and go over these charts and go, okay, well, let's feel this out. Let's look for deeper meaning in these combinations of things and try to figure out what type of energy they've been trying to pull in with this English language that is so discordant, so disharmonic. What is it truly doing? I don't know. Somehow we've been diminished. We don't have mind power. We don't have psychic abilities, but the sun and the moon will pull us around as we get reincarnated, we get recycled, we get upgraded. The sun is always pulling us along, dragging us on this course of enlightenment and empowering our being. So they lose their slaves by the time they get around the Great Wheel Cycle. You know, that I feel like they lose control of the slaves because the slaves finally get the knowledge they need to graduate, and then they have to recreate another type of slave. And then that may be why we're called the fifth root race, that we were created to be the next version of the slavery assignment, and then we will escape the serpent's grasp by the time we get around that big zodiac wheel, by the time we get back around to Aries and civilization collapses again, we will have graduated to another level. And that's the only thing I can come up with. But this is crazy information. It's amazing to see this. And I have hope for the future, you know, that we will obtain the knowledge necessary to escape this reincarnation cycle. And that would be amazing. We have to get out of the school, y'all. We have to go through the 12 grades of school and then graduate. So let's all hold hands and go around the wheel of time together and graduate from this existence and become enlightened beings. I think it would be amazing to do it together. So I hope you like this video, and I will see you guys on the next one.